the UAP Herald, Case File 036, the CALLSIGN Formation. Most of the government files we investigate arrive with too little to show and too much to claim. Tonight is the opposite. Tonight we have the footage. The United States Department of War released a piece of video, 8 minutes and 16 seconds of it, and posted it on an official website under a name that reads, in the file name itself, UAP/USO Formation. A formation of unidentified objects over the open ocean. And when you open the file, that is exactly what you see. A small cluster of shapes out on the surface of the sea, tracked from high above by a military sensor, held in a crosshair, moving together. So this is not a case where the label promises something the tape cannot deliver. The tape delivers. What the tape does not deliver is a single fact about itself. There is no date on it. There is no place. There is no unit, no aircraft, no country, no name. The audio is dead silent from the first frame to the last. And where the operating call sign should sit in the government's own file name, there is only the word CALLSIGN in capital letters, a placeholder, standing in for a real name that was scrubbed out before release. Tonight we do the honest thing. We hold a genuine recording of a genuine formation next to a total void where its provenance should be, and we ask the question that void demands: what do you do with real footage that has been stripped of every fact that would let you check it? This is the UAP Herald. Case File 036, the CALLSIGN Formation. Let us start, as we always do, with the paper, because everything you are about to see comes from a government release, not a rumor. Beginning in May of 2026, the US government started publishing declassified files on unidentified anomalous phenomena through a program it calls PURSUS, the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, hosted on the official portal at war.gov. It came out in waves. Release 1 in early May. Release 2 a couple of weeks later. Then a third and a fourth. Together, the largest coordinated release of government UAP material in history, hundreds of files, drip-fed to the public batch by batch. Our file tonight sits in the second wave. Release 2, distributed, like all of them, through DVIDs, the Defense Visual Information Distribution Service, the Pentagon's own media pipeline. Its catalog identifier is DOW UAP PR052, and we are not taking anyone's word for what this file is. We have the actual video on our own disk, and we ran it through our own analysis frame by frame. Here is exactly what we can and cannot say about it.
The chain of custody is clean, and it is checkable. The file arrived through the Release EZ02 directory of the WarGov collection. We computed its cryptographic fingerprint, its SHA-256 hash, and it begins E67B3, A3B. That fingerprint is what lets anyone, later, prove they are looking at the exact same bytes we are. The container is H.264 video, 24 frames a second, 8 minutes and 16 seconds long, grayscale sensor imagery, with an audio track that is silent from end to end. A separate integrity pass on our side sampled every citation in the analysis and returned 11 of 11 verified. The bytes are what they say they are. It is everything the bytes do not say. That is the problem.
Now, the name. And I want to read it to you exactly, because the words the government chose are the whole reason we are here. The file name is not a caption someone wrote afterward on a blog. It is the label the release itself carries, baked into the file the Department of War published.
DOW UAP PR052 UAP/USO Formation CALLSIGN Mission.
Sit with each piece of that. UAP/USO. The government is hedging between air and water, an unidentified aerial phenomenon or an unidentified submerged one, the two categories separated by a single slash. Formation, not one object, several, moving together in an arrangement. And then two words that are not descriptions at all. CALLSIGN, Mission. In a normal military file name, that is where the identity would live, the call sign of the aircraft or the vessel, and the name of the operation. Here, both have been replaced with the generic words themselves. Call sign, where a call sign was. Mission, where a mission name was. The label tells you two facts existed, and then tells you they have been taken away.
And one honest flag, right up front, because it is the spine of this whole episode. The word formation is one we can partly check against the footage, and, unusually, it holds up. There really is a cluster of objects moving together on that tape. But USO submerged is a claim the visible footage does not establish. We see objects on and just above the surface. We never see one go under. So we quote the government's label, we credit the part the tape supports, and we flag the part it does not. Hold that distinction for the next half hour.
So let us look at what is actually on the tape. Because we have it, and we sat with it, frame by frame. Forget the title for a moment and just watch what the sensor shows, from the top.
Opening frames. Grayscale aerial sensor footage of a textured ocean surface, viewed from a steep downward angle. 3 bright rectangular blocky shapes are clustered in the lower left quadrant. The shapes then reframe into a near-vertical stack of 3 short bright segments, with thin dark gaps between them, in the right half of the field of view.
That is the government's own imagery, described plainly. A steep, near-overhead view of open water, the kind of angle you get from an aircraft's targeting sensor looking down, and on that water, 3 bright shapes, grouped, holding a relationship to each other as the sensor reframes them. 3. Together. Not scattered, not random glints spread across the sea, but a small, tight cluster the sensor keeps returning to. And then the view changes, and so do the objects.
Sensor zoom changes. The objects now render as 3 to 4 small dark chevron, or pip, shade markers, arranged in a tight horizontal row near center, with one additional smaller pip directly below them.
3 to 4 dark pips in a tight row with one riding below. At a different zoom on a different gain setting, the same cluster now reads as dark shapes against the bright water instead of bright shapes against dark. That is normal for a thermal or electro-optical sensor. Contrast flips as the gain and the zoom change, but the arrangement persists. A little formation, 4 objects at most, holding station together while a military eye watches from above. Whatever they are moving as a group. Now watch the sensor itself, because for a few seconds in the first minute, the machine does something deliberate. It commits. Let me be careful here, because this is exactly the kind of on-screen detail we refuse to overread.
A centered crosshair reticle appears, short white horizontal arms with red and green tick marks. Right of the crosshair, on-screen monotext. Our optical read of that text is a short alphanumeric string, on the order of 33M. Moments later, the sensor crops in further, and a second string appears, on the order of 92M with a small second character beside it.
And here is our discipline on that, spoken out loud. Those readouts are our own optical reading of a few blurry characters on a low-resolution sensor overlay. We are telling you roughly what they look like, not certifying what they say, and certainly not what they mean. A string like that, beside a crosshair, is consistent with a range field, a bearing, a magnification, or a sensor mode, but the video gives us the symbol, never the label. So we will not tell you the objects were 33 anything or 92 anything. We will tell you the sensor printed short readouts next to a lock, the way an operational targeting pod does, and we will leave the number where the government left it, unexplained.
But the reticle itself is not ambiguous. Short white arms, red and green ticks, centered on the cluster, that is a sensor being aimed by a crew at these specific objects. Alongside it, in the same stretch, the analysis notes 2 small, dark, elongated objects with faint wake-like streaks trailing behind them on the water. Wake-like. Something moving on or just under the surface, dragging a signature behind it, held in a military crosshair. That is the strongest few seconds on the tape, and it lasts less than a minute. And then the tape does something that almost nobody who clips these videos wants to show you. It falls apart. The middle of this recording is not a formation at all, it is noise, And the honest thing is to sit in it with you, because the noise is part of the evidence.
Interior of the recording. Heavily noisy, high-contrast grayscale ocean surface. Heavily speckled, bright-on-dark wave glint, with no resolvable object markers. This pattern dominates the middle minutes of the clip.
For a long stretch in the middle, there is nothing to lock onto. The sensor is cranked to a high gain, and the sea lights up into a blizzard of speckle. Bright flecks of infrared or reflected light dancing on the wave tops, with no object you could point to and say, "There, that is the formation." Now, a believer edits this part out. We are leaving it in and telling you why it matters 2 ways at once. 1. It is honest texture. Real operational sensor footage looks like this. Long, boring stretches of high-gain glint where the target is lost, the crew hunts, and the water screams noise. That is a fingerprint of authenticity. A fabricated clip would not bother. And 2, it is a warning. If the sea can throw up that much bright speckle on its own, then some of what looks like an object elsewhere on the tape could, in principle, be the same glint catching the light at the right angle. We will come back to that when the skeptic takes the floor. For now, just know, the middle of this file is a wall of noise and we are not hiding it. And then, at the very end, the tape hands you its single strangest frame. After all that noise, the sensor tightens one last time and there is one object, alone on the water.
Closing seconds. A single, isolated, dark, irregular, kidney or blob-shaped object with a bright outline on the ocean surface. Grayscale aerial view, broad horizontal wave bands, no other markers in frame.
One dark, kidney-shaped shape, rimmed in bright contrast, sitting by itself on a banded grey sea. It does not obviously match the tight little formation from the opening minute. It is bigger, softer, alone. And that is where the recording ends. No resolution, no caption, no return to the formation. Just one ambiguous dark blob held for a few seconds, and then the file is over. So here is the honest shape of this tape, start to finish. A tight formation of 3 or 4 objects at the top, a crosshair lock and a wake, a long middle of pure noise, and a lone kidney-shaped object at the close. 4 distinct things in 8 minutes, with nothing to tie them together, because everything that would tie them together has been removed. And that is not us debunking the government. It is us taking the government at its own word, which is the thing almost nobody does with these files, because the release itself never claims these objects are anything. Listen to the standard warning the Department of War prints on this program.
These records are being released for informational purposes. Their release should not be construed as an analytical judgment, an investigative conclusion, or a factual determination about the nature, the origin, or the significance of any observed phenomenon. The material is provided as is.
As is. Informational purposes, not a conclusion. So the name that promises you a UAP formation is, by the government's own framing, a label on a folder, not a finding. Somebody, somewhere in the pipeline, catalogued this clip as a UAP/USO formation, gave it a call sign and a mission the rest of us never get to see, and then let the video out with both scrubbed away. Maybe the full story lives in a report that was not released. A mission log, a sensor track, a witness statement, held back while only the video went out. That is entirely possible, and we flag it as the most likely innocent explanation for the void. The words describe a whole encounter, and we only got the piece of it that shows the sea. But we cannot verify what we were not given. And a claim you cannot verify is not a claim you get to repeat as fact. So let us talk about the word the label leans on hardest, USO. Because it is real, it has a real history, and understanding it is the difference between hype and evidence. USO. USO. USO, unidentified, submerged object. The idea is simple and unsettling, an object that behaves like a UFO, but in the water, or in the truly strange version, one that crosses between the two. The Pentagon has a word for that crossing, transmedium. An object that transitions from air to water or water to air without the violence such a transition should involve. And this is not fringe vocabulary. In 2022, when the Pentagon stood up its dedicated UAP office, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, it wrote transmedium objects directly into the office's mandate. The government formally tasked itself with tracking anomalous objects that are airborne, submerged, in space, and transmedium, all 4 domains by name. So when a Department of War release puts USO in a file name over footage of objects on the open sea, it is invoking a real official category, the exact phenomenon its own UAP office was created to chase. The word is not the problem. The word is legitimate. The question is whether this particular tape earns the submerged half of it. And on its own visible terms, showing objects on the surface but never one going under, it does not yet, not from what we were handed. But here is why the label is not absurd, and why we take it seriously even as we cannot fully confirm it. Because there is a real USO case on real government video whose language this file is clearly echoing. And unlike our formation tape, that one shows the whole event, start to finish. It is the USS Omaha.
On the 15th of July, 2019, off the coast of Southern California, the crew of the Navy combat ship USS Omaha tracked multiple unidentified spherical objects on radar and on the ship's own infrared camera. The footage, shot at night through that FLIR sensor, shows a spherical object moving over the water and then, this is the part that matters, descending and disappearing into the ocean. When it vanished from the screen, it vanished from the ship's radar and sonar too. The Navy searched. No wreckage was found on the surface.
Now weigh that against our file, because the contrast sharpens what we do and do not have. The Omaha footage was declassified in 2021 and authenticated by the Pentagon as genuine US Navy imagery. The government confirmed it was real. It shows discrete, round objects. It shows one going into the water. It has radar and sonar corroboration. Multiple ships in that same area, that same summer of 2019, reported their own encounters. A cluster of sightings serious enough that it became part of the evidence base that pushed the government toward its 2021 intelligence assessment and, ultimately, toward creating AARO. That is what a fully documented USO case looks like. Spheres you can see, a transit into water you can watch, multiple sensors agreeing, and a name on the ship. Our formation tape sits somewhere in between. It has more than nothing. It genuinely shows a cluster of objects, tracked in formation, with a sensor lock and a wake, which is more than many famous clips can say. But it has far less than Omaha. No radar, no sonar, no object going under, no ship, no date. And I want to be scrupulously fair here. The USO language, the overwater setting, the formation of objects, all of it fits neatly into the world the Omaha case opened up. It is entirely plausible that our clip is one real piece of a real naval encounter, and that the corroboration lives in a report we were never handed. Plausible. But plausible is not proven, and the Omaha case is exactly how we know the difference. When the government has the whole thing is on the tape. Here, half of it is in a file name. There is one more reason. The ocean is the eeriest arena for all of this, and it is worth saying plainly. The sea is the last truly opaque place on the surface of the planet. We have mapped Mars in more detail than the deep ocean floor. A radar can sweep 1,000 miles of sky in seconds. Sonar crawls through water that swallows light and signal alike. So, a formation of objects that can move together across open water, tracked but unexplained, and then simply lost into high-gain noise, is, to a naval officer, not a curiosity. It is a question about the one domain the US military can least easily see into. That is the real weight behind a file like this, even a thin one. It is why the words USO and formation stamped on a Pentagon release over open sea make people lean in. Something was out there moving as a group, on water nobody has explained, filmed by an aircraft nobody will name. The label knows how that lands. It is engineered, whether by accident or design, to make you feel it. Our job is to notice the feeling, and then ask the footage, honestly, how much of it is earned. So, let us give the skeptics the floor, because a serious investigation names the boring answers out loud, and on a formation of small shapes over the ocean, the boring answers are strong.
Start with the simplest reading. Small objects in a tight group on the open sea, tracked from an aircraft at night. Do you know what does that every single day all over the world? Boats. A small formation of vessels, fishing craft working a patch of water, a patrol running in a line, a cluster of hulls at anchor, reads exactly like this on an aerial infrared sensor. Several bright or dark shapes, grouped, holding station, each dragging a faint wake. The wake-like streaks the analysis noted are not exotic. Wakes are what things in the water make. Add marine life, a pod of whales or dolphins moving together, a cluster warm against cool water, and you have another mundane formation. That lone kidney-shaped object at the end? A surfacing whale is a dark, irregular, kidney-shaped blob with a bright thermal rim. It is almost a textbook description. And then there is the sensor itself, which this very tape indicts. You saw the middle minutes, a wall of high-gain speckle, where the sea threw up bright glint with no object at all. If the water can manufacture that much false brightness on its own, then some of the bright shapes elsewhere could be the same glint catching the light. The readouts nobody can label. The crosshair on a smudge, the contrast flipping from bright to dark as the gain changes. None of that is evidence of anything extraordinary. It is evidence of an infrared camera doing ordinary infrared camera things over a reflective sea. And the government's own numbers back that skepticism hard. In its fiscal year 2024 report, AARO broke down where its cases came from. Hundreds were in the air domain, dozens in space. In the maritime and transmedium domains, the exact domains this file's title claims, the count was 0, none. When AARO closed cases and resolved them, about 70% were balloons, most of the rest drones, birds, and satellites, and across its entire historical review, it found no empirical evidence of extraterrestrial technology. That is the base rate a formation of blobs on the water has to beat.
That is a powerful case, and it deserves its full weight. The most likely truth about this specific tape is the dull one, boats or animals or glint, filmed by a military sensor filed under a dramatic name. But fairness cuts both ways, so here is the other edge, and it is narrow but real. The skeptic explains the shapes. The skeptic does not explain the void. If this was a routine formation of fishing boats, why does the file carry the words UAP and USO at all? Why redact the call sign of the aircraft that filmed a trawler? Why scrub the mission name, the date, the location, off a clip of ordinary vessels? Somebody with access to the full record looked at this footage and catalogued it as an unidentified formation, and then hid everything that would let us confirm or refute them. The mundane footage and the extraordinary label came out of the same official folder. The skeptic accounts for one of them. The honest answer accounts for neither with confidence, which is exactly why the government still calls it unresolved. And the redactions themselves tell a story, if you read them as a decision rather than an accident, because on this file, the redaction is total in a way that is almost eloquent.
Look at what is missing. There is no classification banner on any frame, no marking that says secret or unclassified or anything at all. There is no declassification stamp. There is no slate card, no title card, no end card. There is no on-screen timecode, no aircraft tail number, no platform identifier, no system metadata strip. And in the file name, where the call sign and the mission name should be, there are only the words CALLSIGN and Mission, standing in for what was taken out. Everything that would tell you who was flying, from where, when, and why, gone. Everything that shows what was seen, the water, the formation, the crosshair, left in the clear.
And that pattern is consistent with the entire program. This is how the Department of War is releasing these files. It shows you the phenomenon and hides the platform. It protects sources and methods, the aircraft, the sensor, the exact position, and lets the scene itself into daylight. But this file takes it to the extreme. On some releases in this program, you at least get a report, a date, a submitting command. Here you get 8 minutes of sea and objects, and a name with 2 holes punched in it. We can see the formation perfectly. We cannot see a single fact that would let us identify the mission, cross-check the date, or find the record where the call sign lives. The redaction discipline that makes the file safe to release is the exact discipline that makes its own title impossible to verify. They gave us the picture and kept every word of the caption. So let us lay the whole thing out in order, one last time, cleanly, so the shape is impossible to miss.
The file. Department of War, PURSU Release 2, distributed through DVIDs. Catalog Identifier, DOW, UAP, PR052, an 8-minute 16-second grayscale aerial sensor video, silent throughout, fingerprint, E67B3A3B, 11 of 11 internal citations verified. The name, UAP/USO Formation, CALLSIGN, Mission. The operating call sign and the mission name both redacted out of the file name itself, replaced by the generic words. The footage. Opening on 3 bright shapes in a tight cluster, reframing into 3 or 4 dark pips in formation, held under a white crosshair reticle with short unreadable readouts and 2 wake-trailing shapes. A long middle of high-gain speckle noise with no resolvable objects. A close on a single dark kidney-shaped object alone on the sea. No banner, no slate, no date, no location, no location, no location, no location, no platform anywhere. The verdict, from our own frame-by-frame analysis, genuine as a record of a tracked multi-object surface formation with authentic sensor overlays consistent with an electro-optical or infrared targeting pod. Weak is proof of anything beyond that because it carries no platform, no date, and no geographic context whatsoever. And the reference case the title's language echoes, the USS Omaha 2019, is real, Pentagon-authenticated, and shows the full sphere into ocean event this file only gestures at.
So here is the honest ledger. What do we know? We know this is a genuine government-released aerial sensor video published by the Department of War through the PURSU program, showing a small formation of objects tracked from the air across open ocean under a military crosshair with authentic sensor readouts. We know the government titled it a UAP/USO formation, redacted the aircraft's call sign and the mission name out of the file name, stripped every identifying marking, and released it as is, drawing no conclusion. We know the USO category the title invokes is real, written into the Pentagon's own UAP mandate, and anchored by at least one authenticated case, the USS Omaha, that genuinely shows a sphere entering the sea. And what do we not know? We do not know what the objects were: a formation of boats, a pod of animals, a trick of high-gain glint off the waves, or something the government thought worth cataloguing as unidentified. We do not know whose aircraft filmed them, from where or when, because every one of those facts is gone. We do not know what the readouts by the crosshair mean, because the file gives us the symbols and never the labels. We do not know whether the lone kidney-shaped object at the end is part of the same event or a different one. We do not know why a genuine, checkable piece of sensor footage was released with its entire identity erased. The file is real, the formation is real, the name is the government's, and the call sign. The call sign remains a word standing in for a fact we were not allowed to have. A cluster of shapes on a dark sea, a crosshair, a wake, a wall of noise, and a lone blob at the close. A file name with the aircraft's name and the mission's name both punched out and replaced by the words for them. Strip away the title's thrill, and what remains is quieter, and in its own way, stranger. The United States government released real footage of a real formation over the ocean, called it a possible unidentified submerged object, erased every fact that would let you check it, and filed the whole thing under a single word: unresolved. Unresolved is not the same word as confirmed. And a call sign you are not allowed to read is not the same thing as no call sign at all. Case file 036. The call sign formation. Every file read. Every claim checked against the record. The UAP Herald. Declassified. Investigated. Filed. A Hive production.